Namaste. It is an age when humanity is experimenting with many ideas and it's trying to also come up with new ideas in every sphere. That's because a new creation is in the offing. One of the first things that Mother and Sri Aurobindo had started, the mother had started, when she was in Paris, there was a group of seekers. This is late 1800, early 1900, and she had started a group called Aidi Novelli, French. I won't vouchsafe for my pronunciation, but it means the new idea. And when she came in 1914 to Pondicherry, one of the three activities that she had started, one was the Arya, which is again the new idea, and business, honesty stores. And the third was the new idea as a group, a society of few people who would come and read. So it was a different kind of satsang. It was not satsang where we repeatedly we hear certain stock phrases and verses from a scripture and somebody interprets. But the time has come for a new idea to manifest upon earth. She says that in one of her prayers also, that like many gods, these new ideas are nothing else but gods who are embodying themselves through the new idea, inspiring human beings to become their instruments. So we see this new idea coming up in various fields in psychology, health, sciences, because they are fields which are open. Education, all these new ideas have already entered. Of course, initially human beings will catch it imperfectly, as happens with every new idea, but slowly they will build upon it. For instance, integral education. People speak about it, but very few really understand. Hardly question of implementing. And just as an aside, for example, now the word integral education has come. Everybody talks about it. But I was just having a discussion. I said, see, Shobindra and the mother used the word integral yoga, integral psychology, integral education, integral humanism, integral health. All these things are our own mental renderings. But even there, it's okay, fair enough. The thing we have to see it that it was the integral, it is the ashram of integral yoga where the education system came as an extension. And who were the teachers? Those who were practicing the integral yoga. Now, when you look at it like that, so you can't have an integral education center without the yoga in the background. You can't just name a place Gurukul and do all the outer things. That okay, we'll do what used to happen in Gurukul, but there are no gurus. So Gurukul, where there it was after a guru, it was a khandan, literally. It was the kul of the guru. So that means now you were known by that identity. Guru kul. You didn't belong to your parents. You came to learn. As the mother says, when people come to the ashram, you must understand that your religion, your country, your identity, everything lies here, the divine. So if we just use a name, Integral Education Center, and transplant it and start a school, even very good school, even mentally was somebody has an idea, it is physical, vital, mental, psychic, spiritual. Still, it's not the thing, because who is going to implement it? Only somebody who is into integral yoga. If one is not a sadhak, he can't be a teacher of integral education system. So this is, if at all we use the word system. So this is going to be the challenge. But still, these new ideas have come. They are being seeded into the mind. So there are people who are fascinated and they will try many approximations, many imperfections. Still, finally, one day people will hit the jackpot, many approximations, till they finally learn how to. So this new idea is declaring itself. In certain other areas, without the idea being used or people using the word idea, they are automatically, life is shifting in that direction of the new idea. For instance, now we have women who have broken free from the kind of bondage they were 100 years back. Though sometimes it's swung to an opposite side, whether they are becoming what man should get rid of and they are adopting it. But that's a different subject. But parenting, new ideas have come in this field. Science, psychology, health, healing, all this it has come. But two places which are the most resistance and where we can see the working is going on is the financial world, where we can see it is trying to enter. Whole basis of economy is shifting. It will take time. And the other is in the field of political governance. So we can touch upon these one by one, but one of them is the political governance, because man has experimented with several systems. He's tried theocracy, he's tried aristocracy, he's tried plutocracy, he's tried democracy, he has tried, of course, dictatorship. Several things man has tried. And all have failed unless we close our eyes and we make democracy as the highest institution. The moment we do that, it's like any religion saying, I am the highest. The same mistake, democracy is the highest. So we don't start searching for something greater. This is what is dangerous because it's counter progressive. So we should say that democracy right now is the only workable thing we have. It's better than dictatorship where tyrants used to govern. Yes, certainly. But then there have been very benevolent dictators. All the Rajas, we hear about in our own scriptures about Ram Rajya, where it is said that Daihik, Daivik, Bhautik Tapa, Ram Raj Kahu Nahi Vyapa. It is said that for 1,000 years, when Rama ruled, all the incidents come later, but it's there in the Ramayana that there was such a harmony, peace, and where everybody lived in good health, so much so that when somebody fell sick, first time there was a Akal Mrityu, a Brahmin's son had died or somebody's son had died, then Ram started wondering there is some imbalance somewhere, and that leads to Shambhukvad. That's a different story, I have spoken about it. But the point is that there was an ideal governance by somebody. In modern terms, a king would mean he is a dictator. Because yes, in the sense that it's his will. Mother has used the word benevolent dictator. But then yes, the system, as a system, it cannot be advocated because, well, now we don't have Ramas and great masters. We have everybody who is feigning to be this or that. And if a tyrant takes over, he may do much good to his own people, but he may be also dangerous to the world. And very often is a threat to his own people. So that tyranny of the despotic dictator was replaced by democracy, because democracy means no, it can't be just one person. It's the age of Narayana, collective. Narayana is a very interesting word. I am not going into Sanskrit meaning. But the one indwelling universal in every human being. So everybody is potentially a god. So you just can't have one person governing. And this is the age when it's the age of collectivity. So you can't have one person who is going to rule everyone. There will be a will of everyone. And so democracy caters to that. But the problem is, though Narayana is potentially in every nar, but most people are far from it. So democracy in practice becomes the rule of the many who are not yet evolved even beyond some very close to the animal kind. Even thought has not developed, so they don't know how to vote. And that's why they are carried away by all kinds of vote bank politics. In every country it is there in one way or the other. It takes extreme forms in certain parts of India where people on the basis of money or basis of certain freebies or promises, people are elected to power, which is obviously dangerous. But that's how democracy, because masses can be easily swayed, especially when they have a leader, religious leader or tribal leader or a caste leader, and people tend to vote. So democracy is, and parliamentary form of democracy, it's a complete failure. And if still we believe that democracy is the best thing and the constitution is God, then we are going to realize 10 years down the line that we are making a blunder. We see in Europe democracy. Where is it? All mankind. It's like it's recognition that all mankind is equal and one. But what happens in practice? People are beginning to realize that all mankind is potentially and essentially one in the deep essence of things. And in that sense, why only mankind? Why we have a collective ego? The fish, the bird, the beast, the stone and the man, plant, everyone is one in that sense because everybody has the divine presence. But that does not solve the problem. You can't misapply a deep truth when mankind is still living on the surface. Meaning thereby, unless people are educated, and by education it has nothing to do with degrees. People may have a lot of degrees. For instance, recently there was so much support for the vaccine. Anybody on the wave of vaccine could win an election. But we realize that, well, more and more people are beginning to realize, saner voices are speaking about it, that, well, that's not the ultimate truth, at least not the last word. There are other elements. If governments would have done to enhance our natural health, our natural immunity, then they would have been of much more use to humanity. No doubt, if you want to give vaccine, give. It's up to you. But take steps to do that. And there are steps which can be done. So that is left to individuals to follow. But you have to create an atmosphere. For example, you have corporate working hours, sometimes 13 hours a day. I know of people. How do you expect that individual will have his own health? You have to maybe pass a regulation that no, it's not allowed. It's happening in certain countries. No, more than 6 to 8 hours, you may not make profits, your problem. But you can't, if really individual is important, then you have to allow them that kind of freedom and time to improve their health, to take care of themselves, and at the same time, they should not go back poorer simply because. So, there are many intertwined issues. So, democracy is only a temporary stopgap. And the time for its departure has come. When do we know that the time for departure has come? Just like in religion, so too, when a system begins to fail, religions are beginning to fail. Why? Because instead of helping man to move toward the spiritual, they are stifling the spiritual impulse and becoming a cause of evil. So we see that governance systems also, they are failing. They are duping human beings and cheating and all kinds of things. The way we know nowadays, with the elections, how WhatsApp can sway the votes. How the human mind can be indoctrinated to make them think in a certain way that they vote for a certain candidate. So much for democracy. Socialistic democracy, communism, all of them. And why it is so? The reason is that it's not about a system, but it's about the man who is the end point through which a system is implemented. Governments, machinery, systems, all of them will be flawed as long as man is flawed. So we go back to this point that if at all we have to discover the true way to govern, we must start from the other way, meaning thereby first self-rule, then rule others. In Indian thought, this what was known as Swaraj, then Samraj. So all the kings earlier, they had to go through a training process. When we read the life of Rama, for example, who governed for 1,000 years, you read there is a wonderful treatise called Yoga Vasisht. So at the age of 15, Rama has existential questions. He's passing through a phase of depression. He wants to understand what life is. And then Rishi Vasisht, his mentor, guru, a yogi, he clarifies his mind and then, he becomes such an ideal ruler. And despite flaws here and there, it's not easy. 1,000 years, as they say, the kingdom was governed in such a wonderful way. Who would do it? Only somebody who has been deeply grounded in a thought of the eternal, in a deeply spiritual consciousness. So, I think nowadays we have, for instance, people who are qualifying for elections. Let's take just that scenario. What is their qualification? They may have done some social service, good. Minimum should be required that they should be people whom human beings recognize as men of integrity. It's not like anybody can just stand and go there. And second, it'll be very nice if there should be something like a spiritual course for politicians. Even these people who have engaged in social service, some kind of social service, when they, before they start the parliament sessions, enter the parliament, there should be a one. Why not? I mean, IAS administrations go through a course. For being a doctor, I go through a course. For being an engineer, you go through a course. Course means you have to understand things in the true way. So it's not enough simply that you know the political systems and you know how to manipulate people. So each country should evolve its own system of ideal ethics in governance. Journalists have to do a course in ethics. Whether they follow it later or not is one thing. But the minimum is that nobody who has been not proved himself in effective social service, done good to mankind, and is recognized as a man of integrity should be barred. And it has nothing to do with educational qualification, nothing to do with caste, creed, anything. That should be a minimum qualifier. And then when such people come, work together, then they should undergo, there should be instructors who can teach them and train them about. Even jury should go through a course, all of them. Because, see, unless you are deeply grounded in a deep spiritual ethos, not religious, deep spiritual ethos, you are not really fit to govern. Their course should include minimum self-mastery, self-rule. So, this is one way that we can navigate. But still, democracy will be flawed. So, what is the future ultimately? Which we can see the first signs of future are beginning to emerge. What is the future? Divine anarchy. You can see now people are revolting. You just can't hold the masses together and say, who is representing the masses? Today it may be a group of leaders, tomorrow it won't be that group of leaders. Now democracy believes by these checks and balances you can correct it, but no, because the people who come there and the cabinet ministers, they again become, so masses sometimes, they have their own true aspirations. Why? Because they have aspiration. They are not trying to get some power. They are not grabbing power. They have certain needs. They may be material needs. They may be spiritual needs. They may be higher need. They may be just need for a clean governance. And yes, they will vote people according to that. But more importantly, that these individuals are beginning to revolt. Why? Because they are discovering that we vote people to power on this basis, that basis, but they don't deliver. So this revolt is the sign that the systems are failing. And when systems come, you can have one of these two alternatives. You will have smaller groups which will be governed by local units. Much easier to handle. Much easier to point out, much easier to connect. See, many of the leaders don't have a connect, ground level connect. We are right now, I would say, well, fortunate in certain ways, but tomorrow you may have a leader. Okay, let me not prophesy, sometimes words carry their own power. But any country, you may have a leader which has no real connect with the masses. But if you have ground units, village units, strengthen them, allow them a degree of autonomy, where for all governance, the people and the leaders, community leaders, they govern most of the things. This will also once for all settle this idea of constant, I want my group, I want your, okay, fine. Your group governs, but this is within your unit, so it can't be at the detriment of others. You have your little unit, your village, or maybe your town or a district. You govern there. And many of these district levels give them more and more autonomy to take care of their own You have a problem with the roads, there should be communication. The system of taxation should also change. Meaning thereby right now everything goes to the center or the state. State is a very big unit. So it should be on primarily within this. The money is circulated. Those who can give more will give more. It used to be, we have seen that in villages. It used to be like that. They would say, okay, we'll make a road, or some rich man will say, we'll make a dharamshala. That's the right way to govern. Nothing wrong with it. And some percentage, because they belong, there would be certain common things of governance. Finances at the larger level, economics, which is intertwined with industry and production, military, law, and of course, administration. These have to be something which is common. Administration includes police. So that will be something which is common. But even there, so some money has to flow from the local unit to the larger and to the largest, not the other way around. So right now what is happening, a chunk of money goes to the center and then it trickles, which is absurd. Because let's say I am a Pondicherrian and I pay a tax, but I see the roads are the same. But if I can have a system where I can put it to the Pondicherry administration, and the Pondicherry administration is duty bound to listen to me, because every time you go to them, they say, well, sir, we don't have funds which have not been released. So we can hold them accountable, and there should be much more accountability. So the whole taxation system has to change. And that will make a well-knit society, but at the same time, there is the larger sense of a nation, which is important, of a civilization and culture, which is very important. Those aspects should be common. So you can't have borders. The borders will be a national border guarded by the military. The financial system where the external affairs, as it is called, foreign affairs, that has to be not a local committee vis-a-vis China, but the nation, because that has an impact on everybody. So foreign affairs, external affairs, financing system, not this part, but otherwise certain larger regulatory policies, though that's really not so important, but at least these two, external affairs, military, and law, because you can't have otherwise you'll have those kangaroo courts. So basically these 3 or 4 things, and then governance will become very simple. You don't need so many people in the parliament deciding about the far outreach, and then you say, I want to reach out to the poorest man in the poorest place. You can't reach out. To an extent you can, but still, because you don't even know his problems. So this one part. Then what will happen is, when you have these small little units, and what the government can do or should do is that create these units not only as thriving units, or encourage them not only as thriving units of commerce as we see today, city life, which is all around commerce, but ensure that there is a kind of possibility of true education and a spiritual, development. Again, we see this in ancient India. So you used to see several, these temples were not just temples where you went to worship. There were counselors there. There were people whom you could go and approach, counsel. You could go and learn about higher values, deeper things. This is something which the Western context doesn't understand. Why? Because it has separated. God is there, higher things, spiritual life. Even in India, we did the same. And the lower things, human mind will govern. The time has come to integrate them. Meaning thereby that there has to be more and more a turn toward the spiritual evolution, which must be seen by the governments and by society as the one thing that can really help us. Because if we remain what we are, a creature of greed, lust, fear, ego, ignorance, then where is hope? Give any system and we'll corrupt it. We'll find a loophole. So the stress should be on a spiritual evolution in every sphere. And the one place from where it should start is education. I don't know how many schools are there where even the idea of spiritual education is considered. All that we have a moral science, which is the most boring aspect, because morality and spirituality are two very different things. Spirituality is about growing towards something which is beyond human. Morality is human. Okay, learn it, but it can never be put into practice unless you grow. It's easy to tell people that honesty is the best policy. But if a human being is living with greed, how do you expect him to implement it? So, what I mean by spiritual education is that people should discover ways and means towards self mastery, towards how to think right, a kind of a, call it psychology, call it whatever name, spiritual psychology, whatever name you want to give it. But conscious living, that would be a very good name. And through this door of conscious living, bring in the spiritual element. People are distraught with religion, but they don't know where to go. So bring this conscious living, which will help us progress. I want to improve my memory, concentration, and I want to live a better life. I want to be happy, simply to be happy. How will you be happy? Now they pick up that, having money. Just as an aside, just imagine, what is the education tending upon? It is focusing on intellectual development, faculties of memory, and to an extent emotional education, to an extent nowadays. But all this to lead a life of desire and ambition, which is your goal. So you're creating asuras. That's what an asura is, a brilliant mind, a puny heart, and a disorder and chaotic life impulse, driven by desire and ambition. So we are actually becoming, educational centers are becoming factories for creating asuras. The very goal must change. Education is all about learning and progress. It has nothing to do with what you will do later, your success, all this is a different story. But during your 12 years or 15 years, you should just learn to become conscious, and thereby also about what history is about, geography is about. Completely decouple it from success and job and just skills. That can be for later. Why are we in a hurry to make people at 18 or 20 get a job and pursuit of money? So it's a whole package. Because if you improve education, you will see that people automatically, from these people, they will throw up leaders who are really able leaders, true leaders. And so, meaning thereby, ultimately, we have to go through a phase of transition when there would be just few people on the top, but many who are using local governance. And these people on the top, they should have certain qualifiers. And qualifiers should be minimum material needs. That's one simple way to ensure that the person is not corrupt. So now we have those declared the assets, but we know what people declare. Minimum material needs. A person with minimum material needs is the right person. He will govern very well because he doesn't have those expansion of desires, either because he has worked upon himself. So that should be an important element of any leader, and it should be like just 4 or 8 people. If you have one such leader who is spiritually oriented, that's the best case scenario. You don't have 4 or 5 people who should be governing, who are spiritually oriented. Find them, bring them, build them. In ancient societies, all the kings were trained like that. So why can't we have a training like that? Just 4 or 5 who can be at the top. In all their decision, they intuitively understand the real needs, material needs and everything else. And that would at least be a passage until divine anarchy comes. What is divine anarchy? Divine anarchy is where each person discovers his own right law. And this right law is the divine law which is within him. He is moved by the divine will. And because it's the divine will, it will never create contradictions. It will be always tending towards building harmony. Right now it is not possible because there is so much that opposes the divine will. Therefore there is disharmony, disorder. Sometimes divine will has to work itself through a Kurukshetra. That should not be needed. When each person will discover his own spiritual, not only grow in awareness, but the will of the divine expressing itself in him through whatever work he may be doing, through whatever he is undertaken in life, then life will grow slowly beautiful. You won't need external police, governance. He will himself know what he should do, not rights and responsibility, but the thing to be done. the true thing to be done. We may say that it's a chimera. Well, all things start with the idea that it's a chimera. Man may fly. No, it's absurd. Man flies and travels to distant, now even transgalactic travels. Man can master himself, but well, people are there who master themselves, who are engaged in this. There is a consciousness beyond mind. It's an absurdity, it's a dream of the idealist, but such things are possible, and there are people who are growing into that consciousness. And we should emphasize on this aspect, on spiritual governance, meaning thereby people with a developed spiritual consciousness more and more come to the governing board. How they will reach there, we don't have to worry. If you have the stress on that, you will automatically say that nature will find its way. Because this world is not a blind world. Because human beings are not ready, true hierarchy is not being realized. When human beings are ready, so our task is to prepare ourselves. And when we are ready, we'll see that the true hierarchy, the spiritual hierarchy, will automatically begin to realize itself. I'll just close this part by reading two interesting aphorisms of Sri Aurobindo on this subject. And the three aphorisms. Democracy was the protest of the human soul against the allied despotisms of autocrat, priest, and noble. Socialism is the protest of the human soul against the despotism of plutocratic democracy. Anarchism is likely to be the protest of the human soul against the tyranny of a bureaucratic socialism. I'm not going into details, but it's all self-evident. A turbulent and eager march from illusion to illusion and from failure to failure is the image of European progress. And we have just bought all these things. We have lost many things which were there built within the Indian system. Completely we have lost. We just copied. And we are copying the failures also. Because we are looking that side to get approval. Somebody has to approve that, you are doing the right thing. But we had these things inbuilt, but that's for later. Democracy in Europe is the rule of the cabinet minister, the corrupt deputy, or the self-seeking capitalist, masked by the occasional sovereignty of a wavering populace. Socialism in Europe is likely to be the role of the official and policeman, masked by the theocratic sovereignty of an abstract state. It is chimerical to inquire which is the better system. It would be difficult to decide which is the worse, with this touch of irony and humor. And last, the gain of democracy is the security of the individual's life, liberty, and goods from the caprices of the tyrant one or the selfish few. Its evil is the decline of greatness in humanity. So that's what we must focus upon. The society should throw up true greatness. And these are the ones who should be who should be governing. People are trying this experiment, for instance, when you not elect but select someone. But here again the limitation is who is really selecting. So not anybody and everybody by the vote bank reaches their parliamentary system. It's actually, if you ask me, it's rotten. And to keep on doing its Mahima Mandan and paying homage. See, Swami Vivekananda said that the ideal age of mankind will be when each man has his own religion. He must discover his own law. But we are not even looking in that direction. Possibility of spiritual evolution, we are not even considering it. We are still talking about revival of religions. But there is a consciousness greater than man's mind. And it is toward this that man's eyes must be turned. And the mother says something very beautiful, commentary on this. All human governments are a falsehood or a chimera. One can hope that one day the earth will be governed by the truth only if the Supreme Lord makes this truth evident to all. That should be the direction. That should be the way of governance. I think some kind of an awakening toward this is happening, at least within the Indian thought. I can see that, though it is being resisted to the nail, very indirectly, not directly, but there is a kind of recognition, a very faint recognition, that there is something greater than human mind, and the person must bow to it. And that authority is not of the priest, but of the yogi, the genuine yogi, the mystic. Priest is a different thing. Priest age is gone. Kings governed by priests, because priests became hungry for power, and that opens doors to, because priests are organized. Again, we have the organized religion and the institutions which created so much evil, because power corrupts. But genuine sages and seers, however rare they may be, who are not after money, that's important. Not because somebody has a name, or anybody can put a qualifier, Param Shri or Yogi Shri, but who are not after money. And these people would be rare to find, but they will automatically come to the forefront when man is ready. Ready for what? Not for governance, but ready to be spiritualized. If man is ready to be spiritualized, the ideal form of governance, which is still in the shadows, and I can use a word for it, spiritual governance. The governance by those who have evolved beyond the material needs and the conceptions of the human mind. When they govern this society, which one day they will, 1,000 years, we don't know, but then we will find once again not just Ramraj, but Swaraj, Samraj based on Divya, the divine. Let's wait for the day and prepare for that. Till then, we can play with all these crises and see their failures. We have perhaps yet a long way to go. Namaste.